say to me, well, it's kind of a deficiency in your faith. If you believe the way you say that you do, you shouldn't worry. And I say, in theory, you are absolutely correct. But even though we are persons of faith, we bring luggage with us. We bring baggage with us. We bring our roots with us. And that's what some people who are perhaps more idealistic than I am don't grasp. That even though you can have a religious conversion and you can have religious conviction, you're still the product of your upbringing. That doesn't go away magically. You don't wave a wand over it and say, okay, now I've had a religious conversion. The way my father treated me, he didn't really treat me. Or, the fact that I was molested by an uncle when I was, this is not true, but I'm saying in theory, the fact that I was molested by an uncle when I was a kid, all of a sudden that's gone away and I don't carry any of that baggage. You hope that it can bring healing, obviously, but you don't wave a wand and all of a sudden that's, and I have had disagreements with other Christians who have told me that my faith is deficient because, or insinuated that, because I still struggle with worry and doubt and fear and what have you. And they said, well, you shouldn't struggle with this anymore. And I say, yeah, you're right, I shouldn't. But I do, okay? There's a wonderful little vignette about, this is not me, this is a little vignette, but about a little boy who's calling out at night for his daddy. He's in bed. Been put in bed, and the lights are out, and he's calling out for his daddy. And his daddy comes in, and he says, "Son, what's wrong?" And he says, "Well, I'm scared. It's dark in here, and I'm scared." And the father says to him, "Well, son, you don't need to be scared because you know that Jesus is here with you." And and the little boy says to his daddy, "Well, yes, Daddy, I know that, but I want somebody with skin and bones." And I think that, in a way, that silly little innocent childhood vignette really bespeaks a very significant truth. That we can have faith, and a lot of times our faith can be very sincere, but we still...
It's abstract.
It's still in the abstract, and we still have our feet on terra firma. And we still struggle. And so, your question is a very prescient one and very real. Yes, they should not have worried, just as I shouldn't struggle with doubt and worry, but I do.
Yeah.
I had a professor once, and Caleb's probably heard it a million times, so he'll have to indulge me, but I don't think you have. But I had a very wise professor, one of the best I ever had, who said to us once in class, theology is not done in a vacuum, that it's largely experiential in nature. I heard that 35 years ago, and I think about that all the time. What a brilliant comment when you think about that. And he was saying basically the same thing. Theology is not some ethereal, abstract thing. It's going to be shaped to a large extent by the experiences we've had in life. We are a compendium of our experiences. Sigmund Freud had a real hard time with the Christian concept of God as Father. And Freud said that's dangerous. Now, Freud, of course, wasn't a believer, but he was on to something, at least tangentially. He said that's dangerous because a lot of people have had a very, very bleak experience with their father, and when you try to tell them that God is their father, that can conjure up all sorts of difficulties if somebody's had a horrible experience with their father. So that's the point that this professor was making, that our theology is going to be shaped to a varying degree by the circumstances that have molded us. But anyhow, both my grandfather and my mother have been tremendous worriers. Not warriors, but worriers. And I think because I spent so much time with my grandfather, and then he passed that on to my mother, I guess, I think that I inherited that. Plus, and I'm not blaming him, but plus, my father constantly told me that I would never amount to anything. And I think all of those things together have have created a person that doesn't have a lot of self-confidence. So I'm not a risk taker. So for me to get outside my comfort zone is not an easy thing to do. It was a very difficult thing for me to go to Guatemala a couple of years ago. It's not an easy thing for me to quit 2 jobs in San Francisco and say, okay, and now I'm unemployed. I know I'll find work in Texas, but it's still not easy for me because that's not my nature to just say, no problem, let's go for it. This will be fun.
Yeah, that's my attitude.
Yeah, of course.
Here goes nothing.
But you want to know what? That's healthy. And it's that spirit of entrepreneurship which has made this country great. People that were willing to take risks. My brother Jeff, for his shortcomings, one of his strengths was he was not at all afraid to take risks. And he took lots of risks in business, and he became extremely successful because of that.
As a matter of fact, when he was 10 years old, he told me he was going to be a millionaire by the time he was 50.
And you want to know what? He was.
He did. Yeah, he did.
And when I was growing up, he told me that he'd be a millionaire by the time he was 35.
Oh.
He did tell me that, but then later adjusted it to 50. And he told people, he told anybody that would listen, when I'm 50 years old, I will not be working anymore.
Yeah.
And he will tell you proudly that I told people that, and I did it.
Yeah. They only told me that when he was 10.
Isn't that interesting? The person he saw himself as at 10, isn't that a self-fulfilling prophecy, so to speak, isn't it?
Yeah, he said be a millionaire by the time he was 50.
How much time? Does this still have a fair amount of time?
Like 40 minutes?
Oh, we got lots of time. Well, the baseball thing that I got on was not a frivolous question. I just find that very interesting that was the one thing that that Pappy passed it on to my dad. My dad passed that on to me, and to a strong degree, I passed that on to my sons. Because if you were to ask all 5 of my sons, probably, what's your favorite thing in life? Within limits, obviously. They might say family first. But I mean, what is your favorite pastime, or what are your favorite childhood memories, or whatever?
They'd say baseball.
Every one of them would probably say baseball.
Well, then they're lucky because baseball's always available. So that means happiness is only a step away.
What a positive outlook. You've always had a positive outlook on life, haven't you, pretty much? And that's great. That's contagious. That's important. That's one thing that Caleb's older brother, Christopher, I'm so impressed, and I don't know where he got it from. I'd love to take credit, but that would be lying. But he has a very, very optimistic perspective on life. And I so envy people that have that. I mean, he just always thinks today's a great day, and by gum tomorrow's even going to be greater. And the way I said my mother is always looking around the corner saying something bad's around the corner, his brother Christopher's always looking around the corner saying, oh, it's going to be great. It's going to get even better. And that's so positive, and it's so refreshing, and I love that. I love being around
And they
positive.
could both be looking at the same thing, and
Absolutely.
one of them would see something good and the other would see something bad.
Well, what do they say? You look at the glass of water that's half full, and somebody says it's half full, and somebody says it's half empty. What wisdom is there in that?